Hey everybody, it's Ron from Pick Dawgz, and this is Ron's Rundown. We're going to go over the MLB games scheduled for Saturday, July 2nd, 2022. Now, if you like what you see, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe to our channel. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comments section below. Now, if you're looking for my MLB best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at pickdawgz.com. I'm running a daily $15 MLB best bet, so check it out at Pick Dawgz Premium. Alrighty, here we go. Here are the games for Saturday, July 2nd. First up, we see the Tampa Bay Rays taking on the Toronto Blue Jays. This is going to be a doubleheader on Saturday. Game 1 with a 12:07 Eastern start time. We should see Shane McClanahan and Kevin Gausman for Game 1. For Game 2, we don't have any starting pitcher listed for either team. So really tough doubleheader in my opinion. Honestly, I'm going to be staying away from this matchup altogether on Saturday. Just think there's so many other games to look at. But, we're going to go over at least Game 1 as we do have a projected matchup with McClanahan and Gausman. McClanahan, I believe, is the best starter in the American League right now. Leads the league in strikeouts, ERA, tied for WHIP, 8-3 winning record. He's given up one earned run or fewer in his last 4 starts combined. The Blue Jays, they're hitting righties and lefties right now, but McClanahan gives the Rays their best chance to win a game in this doubleheader. And Kevin Gausman, I've mentioned, some looks a little off with his game. I know he pitches pretty well in Toronto, but I still don't trust him in this spot. Tampa Bay Rays, I think, do enough offensively to get the win for McClanahan. So I'm going to take the Rays and lean towards them on the money line in Game 1. Going to have to take a Ruffalo for Game 2 as we don't have either starting pitcher announced. And we could see the Game 1 starters move to Game 2, so make sure you're always checking the websites to see who's pitching, right before the first pitch. Could see a big change as Kevin Cash is the type of guy to make those kind of changes. But for Game 1, I'll take the Rays on the money line. Next up, we see the Baltimore Orioles taking on the Minnesota Twins. Jordan Lyles and Sonny Gray are your starters. Now, I do believe Sonny Gray is the far better option in the starting pitching matchup. And I also trust the Twins' bats a lot more in this spot. When you look at Minnesota, number 4 in the league in the last 30 days in team OPS against righties, and then 6th in the league in isolated power during that stretch. It's always tempting to take the Orioles. Like I've mentioned, they've been one of the more profitable teams in the league this season. But this is just a bad spot with Lyles on the mound. 4.94 ERA. He started the season pretty strong, but in his last 5 outings, giving up 4 earned runs or more in 4 of those 5 outings, giving up at least 1 home run in 3 of those 5. The walks are piling up as well for him. I don't like this spot for Lyles. I'm going to take the Minnesota Twins on the run line, laying the 1.5 runs. Next up, we see the Chicago White Sox taking on the San Francisco Giants. Dylan Cease and Logan Webb are your starters for this contest. We've got 2 starting pitchers that have had successful 2022 seasons. Dylan Cease is more of a power pitcher. He's going to earn some strikeouts. Has had issues with the walks and home runs at times, but still this year 6-3 with a 2.56 ERA and a strikeouts per 9 rating over 13 at the beginning of July. Now I know he missed a few starts due to injury, but still very impressive from Dylan Cease to have that many strikeouts at this point in the year. And Logan Webb, not really a strikeout guy. His strikeouts per 9 is under 8 this season, so he relies on his pitch-to-contact stuff, and he's got good stuff. He gets the double play ball very, very often, forces a lot of ground balls, and he's actually been able to pick up some strikeouts as of late. 6 in 6 innings against the Reds last time out, 7 in 7 innings against the Braves in the previous outing, and then 9 Ks in 7 innings against the Kansas City Royals back on June 14th. Now, both of these pitchers are in good form, but I do think the value is on the underdog here. I think it's going to be a close game. San Francisco Giants do strike out quite a bit against right-handed pitching this season, especially in the last 30 days where they're in the top 5 and the highest K percentage against righties in the last 30 days. So I don't really think this is going to be a very good matchup offensively for San Francisco. And I also trust the White Sox bullpen a lot more than San Francisco's. If this game is close late, I think the White Sox have a good chance of pulling it out late as well. So when you're getting plus money, plus 120 on your money, I think that's where you got to go. So give me the Chicago White Sox on the money line. Next up, we see the Miami Marlins taking on the Washington Nationals. Daniel Castano and Jackson Tetro are your projected starters here. Now, to me, rather than taking a side in this game, I'm just going to take the over. We see a super high total at 9.5 for this game. And I know Nationals Park is more of a hitter-friendly ballpark, especially in that DC weather. But I think it really does make sense to take the over here. Daniel Castano, a left-handed starter that has a ton of aggression to worry about in this game. And the Washington Nationals have hit left-handed pitching very well in the last 30 days. So I do like their offensive matchup here with Castano on the mound. And on the other side, Jackson Tetreault, I've mentioned. I don't think he's a viable option in the major league starting rotation right now. I think he's got a bright future. He's still pretty young at 26 years old, but he's only got 8 strikeouts in his entire season thus far in 17 innings of work, 5 walks allowed, 3 home runs allowed also. He hasn't faced the toughest of lineups other than his first outing against the Atlanta Braves, where he did give up 7 earned runs and 3 homers. The Marlins have hit right-handed pitching well this year. I think they get to Tetreault as well, so I'm going to take the over here. I think both of these bullpens are also susceptible to giving up some runs late. Give me the over in the Fish DC Nationals game. Next up, we see an NL Central matchup between the Milwaukee Brewers and the Pittsburgh Pirates. Now, unfortunately, we don't have a line for this game quite yet, as the Brewers have not announced a starter, but Zach Thompson looks to be the projected starter for the Pirates in this game. He's going to be returning from his stint on the 15-day IL. Now, Thompson, 3-5 with a 4.47 ERA. He's had a pretty inconsistent 2022, as inconsistent as you can get, as he really struggled at the beginning of the year. He's been able to sharpen it up as the season's continued, but he has given up 4 home runs combined in his last 2 outings. He pitched 4 1/3 against the Giants, giving up 2 earned runs, 2 solo home runs, and then 5 innings against the Braves, 2 earned runs, 2 solo home runs. So he did have 6 walks allowed combined in those 2 starts as well. It does scare me against the Milwaukee lineup. It's very good against right-handed pitching and a very powerful lineup against righties also. So when you're giving up those home runs, at least 1 in 4 of your last 5 starts, just tough to back yet, even at home. I'm going to take the Milwaukee Brewers here in a lean on the run line. Next up, we see the St. Louis Cardinals taking on the Philadelphia Phillies. Now we're going to see Matthew Liberatore and Kyle Gibson on the mound for this contest. Now this is a pretty interesting game, as there's a couple things that contradict each other stat-wise. You know, Matthew Liberatore is a guy that I am expecting some regression. His ERA is much lower than his current xFIP and expected ERA, but the Phillies haven't hit left-handed pitching as well as they did at the beginning of the season. Now, in the last 30 days, they still are in the top 15 in both team OPS and isolated power against lefties, but they're ranked 14th in the league in both of those. So, you know, nothing too crazy. While the St. Louis Cardinals against right-handed pitching, which they are going to see in Kyle Gibson, they have hit righties very, very well in the last 30 days. Top 10 in team OPS in that stretch. And Kyle Gibson's been super inconsistent recently, not earning a ton of strikeouts, walking a lot of batters, at least 2 walks allowed in 4 of his last 5 starts. We know he struggled quite a bit in his last outing against the San Diego Padres, giving up those 5 earned runs. So to me, I just don't really understand why the Phillies are favorites here, especially without Bryce Harper in the lineup. I got to take the St. Louis Cardinals here, getting a really good price on the money line. Next up, we see the Los Angeles Angels taking on the Houston Astros. Patrick Sandoval and Jose Urquidy are your starters for this one. Now, you guys know me. If you've watched this since the beginning of the season, there's not many times where I'm going to be taking Jose Urquidy, but this is a particular spot where I think he is the better option on the mound, at least in terms of matchups. There's no doubting that Patrick Sandoval has had an excellent season for the Angels, and he was one of the guys that I even said going into the year I was pretty optimistic about in terms of a bounce back or a breakthrough season. He's got 2.63 ERA. However, he has allowed a lot of base runners as of late, especially in his most recent outing, and he's facing an Astros lineup that at the beginning of the season couldn't hit lefties at all. Recently, they are crushing left-handed pitching. I know they have a couple injuries in that lineup, but I think in this particular matchup, when they're top 10 in baseball in team OPS and isolated power against lefties in the last 30 days, I think they get to Sandoval quite early and often. And I think Jose Urquidy is good enough here. The Angels' offense, super inconsistent. At the top, we see the stars doing it all. At the bottom, they can't get any offensive production. I can't trust this Angels team. This price looks interesting, but I think because of Sandoval's ERA compared to Urquidy, we're getting a really good price with a much better team. Give me the Houston Astros here on the money line. Next up, we see the Atlanta Braves taking on the Cincinnati Reds. Spencer Strider and Tyler Mahle are your projected starters. Really interesting pitching matchup, in my opinion. You've got a couple of young guys. You got Spencer Strider, who's a power pitcher, striking out a ton of batters this season. I like him in this particular matchup against the Reds. Team that hasn't hit right-handed pitching very well at all in the last 30 days. So I think this is going to be a successful outing for Strider. But on the other side, Tyler Mahle's another guy that, although his strikeout numbers aren't the best this year, I still think he has some room to grow. I think that 4.53 ERA will shrink as the season continues. He's limiting hard contact this season, and even though he's pitching at Great American Ballpark here, a place where he hasn't had a lot of success in the past, I think he's good enough here against the Atlanta Braves to keep this game a lower scoring than this total. This total's set pretty high. I think these two starting pitchers deserve a little bit lower total, and somewhere in the 8.5, 8 range. So I think there's some value on the under in this one. Give me the under in Atlanta, Cincinnati. Next up, we see the Kansas City Royals taking on the Detroit Tigers. I mentioned yesterday that this was probably the most anticipated series of the season, and we're ready for Game 2 of this one with Brady Singer and Alex Faedo on the mound. The Royals are barely favorites at -120. I do lean towards Kansas City in this game. I actually think that Brady Singer is the better option on the mound for in this particular matchup, and I also think that the Royals lineup is also a little bit more trustworthy than Detroit's right now. Although the Tigers have the better bullpen in terms of ERA and even projected WAR, I think the Royals offense does enough on Faedo, a guy that I am projecting to regress quite a bit as the season continues. I think the Royals do enough damage on him early for Singer to have some breathing room, pitch well enough here against one of the worst lineups in baseball to get his Kansas City Royals team a win. Not often you're going to see the Royals win a game, but this is one where I do think they get the job done. Give me the Royals on the money line. Next up, we see the Oakland Athletics taking on the Seattle Mariners. George Kirby and Paul Blackburn on the mound for this contest. George Kirby wasn't his best in his last outing, giving up 7 earned and 4 home runs against the Baltimore Orioles. But the previous start to that game, Kirby pitched 6 innings of shutout baseball against these Oakland Athletics, 6 strikeouts and 1 walk in a 9-0 Mariners win. I think we see that George Kirby yet again in this spot, facing an Oakland A's lineup that has not been good at all this year, especially against right-handed pitching. And in the last 30 days, that is definitely the case, as they're ranked 26th in isolated power and 28th in team OPS against righties. Paul Blackburn was a guy that we found a lot of value on early in the season when he was more of a lesser-known name. He started to regress quite a bit. Now his ERA is above 3 after it was below 3 for quite some time. Still has a 6-3 winning record, but I think he gets the loss in this game. We've seen him give up 4 home runs combined in his last 2 outings, including 2 home runs to this Mariners lineup. Give me the Seattle Mariners on the money line. Next up, we see the Texas Rangers taking on the New York Mets. Martin Perez going for the Rangers. We don't have an official starter listed for the Mets. Now, in this particular offensive matchup with Martin Perez versus the Mets lineup, you look at the Mets, they have not done very well against lefties this season in the on-base percentage, the slugging percentage department. However, the thing I do like about the Mets in this spot is that they're a very patient lineup against lefties, really in general, but against left-handed pitching, they're in the top 10 in walk percentage this season, or in the last 30 days, I should say, and in terms of strikeout percentage as a team, the Mets are 4th lowest in the last 30 days against those left-handed pitchers. And Martin Perez is a guy that doesn't earn a ton of strikeouts, only 77 Ks this year in 93 1/3 innings. He's also had a bit of a walk issue in years past, and in his most recent outings, he's got up at least 2 walks in 4 of his last 5 outings, including 2 against this Kansas City Royals lineup, last time out back on June 27th. The Royals are not, I wouldn't say they're anywhere near the Mets in terms of offense, but they do play a similar small ball kind of style of baseball. May not have the most sluggers in their lineup other than Salvador Perez. However, they do get the job done by getting on base. Some infield singles here never hurt, a couple stolen bases as well. And they were able to get 7 hits, 4 earned runs on Perez last time. Now, the Royals pitching staff blew that game in the end in 10-4 blowout. However, we know the Mets have been pretty strong in the bullpen, and I think they can get the win here as long as they can score a few on Perez early. We'll have to see if the Mets decide to start in this game, but I'm going to lean towards the Mets on the money line for now. Next up, we see the New York Yankees taking on the Cleveland Guardians. Tristan McKenzie and Nestor Cortez are on the mound. Now, we've seen both guys regress quite a bit in their last few starts. Nestor Cortez struggling against the Astros, the Rays, and the Twins. We saw McKenzie get hit pretty hard against the Minnesota Twins himself. But I do trust Nestor Cortez in this spot, and I also trust the Yankees lineup and bullpen a lot more here as well. I think we're getting a pretty good price with New York because of Cortez's recent struggles. But you look at the Cleveland Guardians, they have not hit left-handed pitching very well this year. Now, they do limit strikeouts, and Nestor Cortez hasn't had the most strikeouts as of late, so that could hurt him in this spot. But Cleveland, in terms of OPS in the last 30 days, they're ranked 28th against left-handed pitching, so they're not really getting much done against lefties. While Tristan McKenzie, I mentioned that he had a really big susceptibility issue with the home run ball because of his high average exit velos, the hard hit percentage, the barrel percentage. He's got up at least 2 home runs in 4 of his last 5 starts, and that's not good against this New York Yankees lineup, especially against right-handed pitching, as the Yankees have crushed righties all season long. You've got some of the biggest power bats in the league, including the home run leader in Aaron Judge. I don't like this spot for McKenzie. I don't like this spot for the Guardians. Give me the New York Yankees on the money line. Next up, we see the Boston Red Sox taking on the Chicago Cubs. Now we're going to see Josh Winkowski and Alec Mills on the mound for this game. Really don't want any business of backing either of these starting pitchers. I do think both guys could be pulled early, just like we saw for Friday's afternoon contest in a 6-5 Cubs win. That game went over the total. I think this game's going to go over the total as well. Alec Mills has given up 5 earned runs at least in his last 3 starts each. Josh Winkowski only 13 strikeouts in 20 innings this season. I just think both offenses show up here. We see both bullpens struggling a bit as well. I like the over in the Red Sox Cubs. Next up, we see the San Diego Padres taking on the Los Angeles Dodgers. Yu Darvish and Tyler Anderson are your starters here. Now, while I haven't been impressed with Tyler Anderson's last few starts, especially against teams that haven't hit left-handed pitching very well as of late, I actually think he's the better option in this matchup. You look at San Diego, in the last 30 days, they're ranked 22nd in the league in team OPS against lefties, 24th in isolated power. And Yu Darvish is a guy that I've watched quite a bit as of late. And although he's had pretty good success in terms of the earned runs he's allowed in his last couple outings, I haven't necessarily been impressed with the way he's pitching. He gets into trouble early on in starts. He also has a problem with hard hit percentage. Although he hasn't given up a home run in his last 2 outings, we've seen plenty of balls hit to the warning track that have just missed clearing the wall. And this Dodgers lineup is a very, very powerful lineup. They do hit right-handed pitching very well. They know Yu Darvish very well also. And I think this is a bad spot for Yu Darvish overall. I'm going to take the Los Angeles Dodgers here. We're getting a really good price with them on the money line at home. And in our final game of the night, we see the Arizona Diamondbacks taking on the Colorado Rockies. Dallas Keuchel and Austin Gomber are your starters here. Now, last week we saw a matchup between the Tigers and Diamondbacks with Keuchel and Bo Brisky, and to me it was just, I called it the regression wars. We had 2 starting pitchers that that I don't back very often, and I said I'm going to take the over no matter what. The game went over by a mile, and I got to take the over yet again in this spot. The total set at 11.5. The weather hasn't been the best for hitters at Coors Field the last couple home games for the Rockies, but still, there's just no way I could think about backing either of these starting pitchers. The Rockies have crushed lefties all season long, so I do think I give them the edge in the early parts of this game, but I've mentioned the Rockies have one of the worst bullpens in baseball. They also do not play good defensively at all, so it could cost them a few runs there. And the Diamondbacks have hit pretty well at Coors Field in recent seasons. Although they're not the strongest against lefties, Austin Gomber just has not figured it out this year. A 6.55 ERA. He was known to be a Coors Field pitcher, but in his last start at Coors Field against the Guardians, a lineup that does not hit lefties very well at all, Gomber went 4-2, 9 hits, 5 earned runs, a home run. He was awful. I got to take the over here in this Diamondbacks-Rockies game to end the night. And that's it. Those are the games for Saturday, July 2nd. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe. And don't forget to put your baseball picks in the comment section below. Again, if you're looking for my best bets, you can find those at the Premium Picks tab at Pickdawgz.com. As always, this is Ron Romanelli. Good luck.